Welcome to one of my favorite sessions, Microphone Basics. Get ready.
So first we've got, what is a microphone?
Well, that's a very good question. People all know what microphones are, but they may not know how they work, and it's not that important. But this is a microphone, for example. The microphone has a body. You notice this one has little ribs on the side. They help capture sound that you may not want in your recording. It helps filter out side sound. Now in this case, this microphone you would talk to pretty much in the front or a little bit to the side. Right here is the capsule of the microphone, or what they call the capsule. It's in there. And there's a little diaphragm that moves. And that is what makes the microphone get all of its sound. It could be analog. It is analog when it starts, and then there's a little circuit in here that transforms it into a digital sound. So when it goes into your recording equipment, it goes in as a digital signal.
Now we'll tell you the difference between the two main microphone types.
Yep, as in everything else in this world, there's always two of everything. So I'm going to show you that you have what they call condenser mics and dynamic mics. The mic I have in my hand right now could look like a condenser or a dynamic one. Most of them look pretty much the same. This one is a dynamic microphone. Here's some of the qualities of dynamic microphones.
So dynamic mics, they require a preamplifier. They don't require 48 volt phantom power, which is an additional amount of power that your preamplifier can give your microphone. Condensers do, however, require 48 volt phantom power and a preamplifier.
Yeah, so all mics do require some form of preamplification. Some USB mics can amplify themselves because they have the power they're getting from the USB port to amplify them. But if I were to talk into this and it wasn't giving me any kind of preamplifier, or a preamplifier is something that amplifies the signal or makes it louder that's coming into, let's say, your computer to be recorded. If I talk into this without a preamplifier, it's going to sound about that loud. In other words, you won't be able to hear it very well. If I talk to it with a preamplifier, it'll sound pretty nice. You'll hear it just like you hear this little one right here. Now, by the way, this little one, which sounds so little, is actually a very high quality microphone. This is called an ear set microphone. It's over the ear, as you can see. So when a mic is over the ear, you just hang it on. You can keep these on for hours, and they're very comfortable. The ear set microphone, even though it looks so small and cheap, this is actually a $700 microphone. This big beast is a $229 microphone. That's not to say this is worse. It's different. These have very small, high-powered capsules in them. This is a condenser mic in this, and they can really pick up sound from vibrations and from your mouth. This, the dynamic microphone, needs power, and sometimes a lot of power. So amplifiers need to give most dynamic mics between 60 and 65 decibels units of gain in order to run. This one is about like that. Now, we could get something like this. This is a condenser microphone that's rather unique. This condenser microphone, which looks like a little geodesic kind of dome kind of look, it's got a rubber cover. That's for the noise. This has two microphone capsules on it. This is a Rode Video Mic X, $800. I think it's now down to about $600 or $700. It was $800 when we got it. That microphone, or this microphone, is used for capturing background audio. So, for example, it literally has a purpose of capturing freeway noise, birds chirping, flies flying, birds, dogs barking, whatever is part of your background noise, a waterfall, a stream, a brook. This will do an incredible job of capturing pretty much almost 360. It's really a very good microphone. It actually captures more like a little over 180, but it does an incredible job of capturing it. really neat microphone. It's expensive, but boy, it's great for capturing ambiance, which is important sometimes. The other thing we have, let's say, is... Oh, I showed you the shotgun, I think, before. Where did I put it? Here it is. So this is a shotgun mic. The shotgun mic has little ribs here, teeny weeny little air vents. They protect sound from coming into the side. And it's got a very small little capsule. However, a shotgun mic has one of the best sounds. One, for dialogue. If you're over people, you can capture two people having a dialogue. You can also capture voiceover very, very well with a shotgun. If I only had the money to buy one microphone, and I had maybe $1,000, it's actually a $900 or $950 microphone, I would buy the Sennheiser MKH416. That would probably be my all-around best mic I could buy if I could only afford one mic. And the reason being, it's such a good mic. It is a shotgun mic. It has a great sound reproduction. It is used by voiceover talents everywhere, and it pretty much stays right about here. You can keep it close. You can keep it further away over a shot. You could keep it underneath you. Same thing. It does an incredible job, as do all shotguns, of capturing audio. Well, let's move on.
So we have a few more facts about dynamic mics here, such as the fact that they can tend to handle loud volume, people that are speaking or singing very loud quite well.
They're very forgiving.
Yes, and we've also got an example of a small preamplifier here called the Cloud Lifter.
I have a Cloud Lifter. Now, this Cloud Lifter is a fascinating device. So let's say you spend $200 on your microphone, but your preamplifier doesn't have enough juice to power it with enough power. So what happens is you lift up your gain as high as it goes. And while your amplifier can do that, and it gives you a very big wave file and it sounds full and rich, it also sounds bad. It sounds like it's clipping a little bit, which because it probably is. You're getting a little bit of noise from the amplifier itself. All of the preamplifiers and amplifiers have noise, self-noise. And the louder you push them, the louder the self-noise is. Even Class A preamps have loud noise. So what this does is this adds $150, to your, almost took my ear off, $150 to your microphone price. Then you connect your microphone here, and then this goes into your preamplifier. This requires 48-volt phantom power. So you're powering the Cloud Lifter. There are no controls on this, nothing. It just has 4 little feet. You put it down, plug the mic in, the other send goes into the preamplifier, and now you only need to go maybe 25% gain on the preamplifier. The rest is handled by this, and as a result, you have an ultra-quiet signal. Dynamic mics sound incredible when you go through these. Very well worth it. One of the mics we have is the Shure SM7B. These are all very memorable names for you to remember, right? SM7B, what does that mean? Nothing. Probably short microphone 7B. I have no idea why they called it that. So anyway, so this Cloud Lifter will make a Shure SM7B, which is a monster requiring a ton of power and gain, not needed. It's really great. And because otherwise you would be maxing out most preamplifiers with something like a Shure SM7B, which, by the way, is one of the top podcasting microphones out there. It has a really nice sound with no issue.
And we've got a few other facts on condenser mics, such as that they are more noise sensitive and that they're usually considered to provide a warm, more resonant sound.
Yeah, one thing about condenser microphones, they are truly beautiful to listen to. Dynamic mics can sound a little harsher, not always, but they can. Some of the ones we use are very, very much like condenser mics, which is what makes them so appealing. But some of them are a little bit harsh. They have a certain grit to them, which is great for AM radio. Have you ever noticed when you're in a car, AM radio is blaring at you? And now at the top of the hour, we've got... And they get your music. They're loud. Why? Because dynamic mics have frequencies that cut through the car noise. So when you're driving in a car, you can hear AM really well in a car, even with your top down. FM is a little better. It's better modulated. So as a result, you have to listen a little bit louder and you don't get that noise. It sounds beautiful, but you probably wouldn't hear it too well with the top down. Or you'd have to really pump up the speakers and irritate everybody around you. So that's why dynamic mics are on radio. Condensers can be, but more often than not, they use dynamics because in radio stations, it's not quiet. People are saying, what? Not quiet? No, radio stations are noisy. And in many big radio stations, they may have many stations under one umbrella. So you've got DJs next to each other all talking loudly. You don't want to pick up the people next to you. That's why they have dynamics. They reject noise. A condenser would not survive in that environment.
This leads to the question, which mic should you use? And we've got our list here of some different recording environments and what your choice might be. So the first up, if your recording environment is noisy, we would recommend a dynamic.
Yeah, because if you're noisy, like we just talked about, noise gets into microphones. But dynamic mics are very resilient and very resistant to noise. A good choice for a noisy office or environment.
And next, if you want a warm, resonant sound, we'd recommend a condenser.
Condenser mics are what most professional singers sing into, professional voiceover talents talk into. That's not to say that all condenser mics, I shouldn't say all dynamic mics cannot be treated as condensers. Some of them can. We can make some condensers sound, or some dynamic mics sound exactly like condensers, but they're further and fewer between. You're better off with a real condenser for that nice, warm sound. And when you watch TV and you hear voices sing and other things, they're usually condensers.
What about if you have a loud speaking voice? We would recommend a dynamic.
Well, that's true, Harold. And if somebody's really, really loud, and there are people out there who are really loud. I've been on a bus recently with people talking or in a room, and you can always tell the one loud person. That person needs a dynamic mic because they will probably blow the capsule off of a condenser mic. The louder you are, the condenser mic capsules are more sensitive. So, for example, here on my boom pole, here, handy boom pole coming right down. So this is a boom arm. And I've got a Sennheiser MK4. I love this microphone. This is a $299 microphone. It is cheap for what you get. This microphone could have easily cost $500 to $800 or even $1,000. It's that good. Now, if you put this microphone, it's extremely melodious, very clean, nice, warm sound. This mic wouldn't be good for that loud person. It would be too loud. It would overpower it with pops and other noise, so it wouldn't sound that good. So you want probably a dynamic mic for somebody who's kind of obnoxious or can't control their own mouth, because everybody's different. Some people talk very loudly, some people talk real low. If I talk really loudly right now, this probably clipped. It may have gone, ooh, what's he doing? If I talk real loudly right now, I'm not that loud. But if I talk at my normal voice, it's probably pretty good. If I talk really low, this is probably not the right mic for it. So, yes, loud, dynamic is better.
And say you have a room that's very quiet, very noise absorbing, well sound treated, we would recommend a condenser.
Yeah, if you've got a room that's quiet and can handle it, why not go condenser? You're going to get the best sound out of a condenser. It'll really sound warm and professional and full and rich. That's a great sound. If your room isn't treated, or maybe you share it with other people, or it's too big a room and you're getting vibrations or echoes coming from your voice, you probably want a condenser. But if for any room like that, no, stick with probably a dynamic, because you don't want things that are reflecting back. When you're in a large room, everywhere you talk, every wall, think of it as reflecting audio. Audio bounces. So if I'm talking this way and there's nothing to capture my voice, it'll go bounce back, bounce to the side. It'll keep bouncing until it's run out of bounce. And that could be a lot of bouncing. That usually creates a small echo, or sometimes a large echo. You're like in a concert hall. You ever go into a concert hall and you hear, hello, hello? That's because it's bouncing everywhere. Here's a test. You walk into a room and do this. Now, in our room, we're treated. In every corner, we have bass traps. That traps the lower bass frequencies. So they bounce and stay there. They hit them and they don't bounce anymore. We also have fiberglass panels. They're very nice. They're actually muted. When sound hits them, they don't bounce it. I could go right in front of that panel and talk, and you won't hear me almost. It absorbs that much sound. I've got behind me a curtain. That curtain absorbs sound. So you can do a lot of things to make your area quieter. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later.
If you do a lot of software demos and training, we would recommend a headset or a lavalier mic.
That's like what I have on right now. I would recommend the headset over the lavalier. The lavalier would go here. But if you turn and look here, you're losing about 70% of your sound. If you go this way, you're probably losing it again. If you look up or if you look down, you may hear you screaming at it. But with this, the sound goes with you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hasn't changed. I could turn over here, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hasn't changed. You're going to get the same audio level from this no matter what position your head is in. And that's good. If you're doing a software simulation or you're doing video narration or anything that requires you looking at a screen and maybe moving around or even doing other things, these are very good. But remember, the good ones are expensive. You don't probably need it unless you have the money to buy one. You can get headset mics where the little mic stays with you. They're not too bad. Some of them are pretty good, and they're not that expensive, but they can also become over $400 or $500, depending on the quality of what you had. They're used more often than not in sports, sometimes for podcasting, but more often you see them in sports booths, sport announcers, because they have big microphone capsules and they're very localized and they're quiet.
Finally, if you do podcasts and video conferencing, depending on the situation, any of these could work.
That's right. Never say never. Never rule out a microphone, because you can always get a microphone to work. It's just that some microphones may not work at optimum conditions or optimum performance if the conditions aren't right.
Next, you're going to learn about some microphone cable types.
Cables. I have Rick's corollary or theorem. You never have the microphone cable you want when you need it, no matter how many microphone cables you have. And we have proven that in-house hundreds of times. You need a specialized cable, it ain't here. It's sad, but it's true. I don't know why that happens, but it does. So keep a stock of cables you need, and believe me, you'll probably run out of one right when you want it.
And I actually have examples of some of these different cables. Well, we have the picture on the slide here, but I can also show you in person. So we've got XLR female and male here. This is very common for dynamic and condenser mics. You'll usually find an XLR connector.
And XLR microphones have the benefit of being able to be run hundreds or even 1,000 feet or more. They're not limited to a very short distance, and they're also shielded from electrical hums and other noises. They're pretty well shielded. It's not perfect, but the better the quality of the cable on the microphone, on the cable, the better shielding it will have.
And the two other types I have here are both variations of tip ring sleeve. We've got the 1/4 inch, and we've got a 3.5 millimeter in diameter tip ring sleeve connector.
So let's show that in the slide again. It's probably a little bit easier to see the
Little
tip ring
closer
and
here.
sleeve. The tip ring and sleeve is a 3-part connector, and that carries signal from either mono or stereo sources and can do other things. So they're used specifically to carry signal. You may only need the tip. You may need to tip the ring, or you may need to tip the ring and the sleeve, and that's how those work. A 1/4 inch cable, which is the one Harold was showing, that one is used for example, plugging in musical instruments. It can be used to plug in microphones and stuff. Not as common, but it can be. And it can be used for other kinds of headsets, headphones, things like that. The 3.5 millimeter, that is your standard small cable that you plug into your phones. You plug into headsets many times. You plug them into PCs or Macs. That's a 3.5 millimeter, or I think it's a 1/8 inch connector. They're very common. They're used everywhere. And they're just as good. You can run them longer, but the problem is because the cables are so thin, they are susceptible to noise. And the noise can come from electrical sources or other things.
And one thing to note and watch out for with these tip ring sleeves, or rather the 1/4 inch and the 3.5 millimeter cables, is that sometimes there will be tip ring sleeve, sometimes there will be tip ring sleeve, TRRS, and sometimes there will even be TRRRS. So you can have different numbers of connectors. Just make sure that you're putting the right connector into the right port, because sometimes if the ground is in the wrong place and it's got the wrong number of contacts, you can short something out.
And by the way, like anything else, even though these are not high powered cables, you can get a small electrocution from them. You can get a shock. So be careful how you handle the cables, and don't put your fingers, and don't have wet fingers when you touch them, because if you're connected to a live electrical source, you could zap yourself. Be careful.
And speaking of being aware of your cables, we're going to talk about crossing cables, the way that cables should cross over each other.
Yeah, if you run cables side by side, like in the left image there, what happens is, side by side, they will create a harmony with each other. They're harmonious. They'll start infiltrating each other's space. The one that carries power will get into the one that doesn't. And so you have, or could carry power, but it's a lesser amount of power. They'll hum. That's one of the bad sources of humming and other electrical noise. It won't always do that, but you run the risk. The longer that those two cables are going parallel, the more chance you have of creating hum and noise. Now, on the other hand, if you cross cables, no harmony exists. They don't cause any grief to each other. They're just passing by in the wind, perfect strangers. So keep that in mind. If you've got a lot of electrical stuff and your cables are not crossing, you run the possibility, not guaranteed, but there's a good chance that may be one of the things that may be causing you grief or noise in that microphone.
Next, we're going to go over some of the terminology of different ways to hold your microphone. First off, we've got dynamic off-axis.
So let's make believe this is a dynamic mic. It looks like one, but it's really not dynamic. This is a dynamic mic. So let's make believe I'm holding this as a dynamic or condenser. Off-axis means here is on-axis. I'm straight in. Off-axis, it's not quite to the side, but it's not quite. It's a little bit in front, but slightly off to the side. That means you're kind of brushing, the wind brushes by it. It doesn't go right into it. And these are built that way so you have a much more gentle voice hitting the microphone. Much less chance of explosives or plosives. Much less chance of vocal mouth noise. Like you're going to get less sibilance from your S's, those kind of sounds. And that's how you would hold it. You could hold it either a little bit down or just pretty much parallel.
So as he mentioned, there's off-axis and on-axis. You can also use off-axis for condenser, as Rick
So here's
said.
on-axis. on axis, I'm talking either directly into it, a little bit this way, but it's usually either right in front or right just slightly below. These you talk into, usually you do this with dynamics. There's very few condensers you can do this with, but with dynamics you would do that. And what that does is it just gives you a lot more signal because dynamics don't have that much oomph. So you can talk and scream into it. If you notice, screamers use these kind of microphones to scream because nothing makes them go off. I mean, not a lot. You'd have to really scream loudly to make them go. So they're very good mics for that.
And for a shotgun microphone, it's usually placed directional.
Yeah, so a shotgun is usually, if I'm looking that way, I'm going to be having it about here. I could have it up here, if you can see that. Or here, in front of me, maybe about that far, maybe even close. But they're usually directional. You can talk off-axis to shotguns, and I do it all the time. And it works beautifully well, but you have to be close. The more I'm out here, the less it's going to capture. But up here, they are wonderful. They sound beautiful.
And the last thing that we have to keep in mind about mic placement is the proximity effect.
Ah. Okay. I'm going to grab this mic again. Proximity effect, and let me try it with this. So this is an ear set microphone, so it's not that close to my mouth. If I bring it here, now this is an ear set microphone. It's a little bit closer to my mouth. What you just heard was the proximity effect. That means the closer you get to the microphone, the more it sounds like you're watching the romantic hour at 12 midnight, or you're listening to that. Proximity is when you're either trying to get your message across, be romantic, be more sinister. It changes your voice, makes it deeper, maybe harsher, maybe softer. It depends on the mic. But that is the proximity effect. You have to be careful because you don't want to talk this way into something for minutes and minutes on end. You're either going to get somebody excited or hating you. It's going to be too much noise. So keep that in mind. You don't want too much proximity effect all the time. It's really meant more for, sorry, I'm making a mess here. It's really meant more for emphasis. Or sometimes if you have short things like on commercials or any other kind of training you're doing, even short sound bites for e-learning, you can get up close, get a little closer to the mic and give it a little more oomph.
Next, you'll learn about microphone patterns. First up, we've got cardioid pattern.
Yeah, so if I have my mic again here, a cardioid pattern, like the picture shows, goes around. So if I'm holding here, the cardioid pattern maybe goes as far as around my head and barely. It's amazing how they get these patterns, and they're called pickup patterns. They pick up your voice and just here, so that if somebody's next to you, they won't pick up their voice. It's just very localized to you.
The next pattern is omnidirectional.
So omnidirectional works where it's capturing two patterns. A little bit more on one side, a little bit less, but they're awfully close. You could put a mic, let's say an omnidirectional mic, you could probably put between two people and it will pick both of them up. Or maybe you have people next to you and it's picking up a little bit of their dialogue, but not that much. It can be used for ambiance. More often than not, omnis are used in conference rooms where they pick up everything in a circle. That is a common place you see omnis. Many times on these small little mics, they have an omni pattern because they want to get as much of your voice as they can.
After that, we have hypercardioid pattern.
Now, hypercardioid can pick up a lot in the front and a little bit in the back. But the hypercardioid microphones are also good for dialogue. You could put them maybe hiding in a desk somewhere, in a corner. You can't see it, but if you're doing a video or two people are talking, they can talk to each other and it will pick it up. You can do the similar thing with the omnidirectional, but the hypercardioid is a little better in as much as it has more on one side, so it's a little stronger there. And they're good for, again, video production, not so much for audio production, but for video they're great.
Finally, we've got stereo left-right pattern.
So the stereo mic, usually you can hold or in the middle or point at people, and it usually has pattern here and a pattern there. Now, In video, we usually don't use stereo mics that much because they can pick up unwanted noises, but they can come in handy. Stereo mics are used a lot for interviewing as well, reporting mics. Though with a lot of the reporting mics, they have really one pattern. You notice a person getting close or coming back. This is cleaner than having it in the middle because the pattern will usually go more one way, a little less the other.
Next, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the major microphone brands.
Yeah, there's a lot of good brands out there. We've covered some of the better brands right here as we're talking. So let's show some of the brands we've got.
So we've got Rode, we've got Neumann, Electro Voice, we have Audio-Technica, we have Sennheiser, we have MXL, we have Blue microphones, Zoom, and Shure.
And those are just some of the brands, very popular brands. Shure makes great microphones. They all do. Blue makes microphones that are very good. Neumann is very high-end. Neumann and Sennheiser are the same company. Neumann is owned by Sennheiser. And by the way, don't tell any audiophile a Neumann. They go crazy. They do. Honestly, they do. It's a Neumann, German brand. Sennheiser is a German brand too. We've got some other brands there. All of those brands are very good. Every one of them will give you good microphones. MXL is an American brand. I think they're made mostly in China. Actually, probably most of these are made in China right now, so probably nothing unique there, but it's how they use the electronics, and the designs come from different places. Just great mics, all of them. If you want to find out more about microphones and you want a link to that, we can send you a link to that page, and you can go and check all of them out for yourself. Or go to sweetwater.com, or actually we have a site on that, I think.
Next, we're going to talk about some of the major handheld field recorders.
So we're going to field recorders. Okay, so buying is later. Field recorders. I didn't bring one in, but that's okay. You can see them here. These are some field recorders that are very popular that can be used to record in the field, but not necessarily in the field. They can be in your office. They work very well.
Pictured here, we've got the Zoom H4n. That's a very popular one.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Zoom H6. That's sort of a step up from the H4n. We have the Marantz PMD 661 Mark III. And we've got Olympus's LS100.
Yeah, and the dark horse here is the Olympus LS100. It's not that popular, but boy, it is one of my favorites. It works really well. The Zooms are good. Not one of my favorites. I don't mind them. They're very good. But I find the display is a little hard to read. So that's my only nit. They're very faint in certain environments. The Marantz is Marantz is an old audio company with very good reputation. I believe Marantz is owned by Samsung, if I'm not wrong, indirectly. There's a lot of companies owning each other.
And the Olympus LS100 here, it actually has a feature that none of these other ones have.
Yeah, it talks to you. So you have voice prompting, which is nice when you're in a dark area and you don't want to be really brightly lit, or you're in the sunlight, you can't see the screen. You can hear it. And surprisingly, the Zooms, which have the worst in-sun screens, don't have that. So it's a wonderful feature for Olympus. By the way, they all have very good sound recording, every one. You probably wouldn't tell them apart. They're all extremely good.
Next, as we mentioned earlier, where to buy audio gear.
There's a lot of places. My favorite is probably Sweetwater because I go there a lot. And the nice thing about them is they do establish relationships with you. They get to know you. They figure out what you like and want. Very, very good company. Amazon sells just about everything, and they go through either themselves or third-party resellers. And again, they have some very good microphone choice. You can buy just about anything on Amazon. Not everything, but almost anything. What else do we have?
We've also got B&H here.
Oh, B&H. B&H has a wonderful audio department. They're out of New York. They're probably one of the top video and audio retailers in the country. They're huge. I think they have a 3 or 4 story building in New York City, and It's a whole, I think, 1 or 2 city blocks. It's enormous. They have a large inventory of stuff in-house and stuff that you can order.
And other than that, we also have here Marker Tech, we have BSW, Broadcast
Yep.
Supply West, and we have Full Compass.
Yep, all good. All good places to get your mics and your preamps and everything else. And also look for your local resellers because some of them are wonderful. We have Sammy's Camera in LA. They're great. They don't carry as many mics, but they carry enough for doing what you need to do, mostly in the video business. But they're great. And there's just a lot of places you can buy good microphones. So don't feel you need to buy a piece of junk. You know, we didn't talk too much about that, but you don't have to spend a fortune on microphones. You can buy a good mic for not that much money.
And that is it for microphone basics.
Yeah, so our next lesson's coming up, but one last point on microphones. Anything under $100, be careful, you may not be getting a very good mic. You can get very, very good mics between $200 and $300. You get great mics at $400 or $500. You get incredible mics sometimes at $1,000 or more. But, believe it or not, sometimes those mics aren't all that much better than a $200 mic. So you don't have to spend a fortune, but do try a mic before you buy it. Because sometimes, unless you have an idea, it may not sound that good on your particular voice, especially if you're a woman. Not all mics for women sound as well because in some cases, many women have higher voices. If you have a lower voice, the woman probably has no problem with mics. Most of them tend to be tuned a little bit better for lower voices. But there are mics. Blue, for example, has very good mics with higher voices in mind. All of them do. But just be careful what you buy and ask your salesperson what they would recommend for your voice.
All right, that's it for microphone basics. We'll see you in the next section where you'll learn how to set up your studio.
Another fun topic.